Margaux. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, because your name is spelled Margaux. And I was afraid I was going to say it the wrong way, but here we are.
Perfect.
I took a risk, and now we're here. So welcome, and why don't you give us a quick rundown? What are you up to in Austin, Texas? What are you all about?
Super excited to be here. What do I have going on? I am serving people in the mentorship space, specifically entrepreneurial rebels who are in a place where they've created technically on paper the finances, the career, checks off the boxes, and there's something missing in their experience and their fulfillment. And so they're really in this process of discovering more of who they really are and who they want to be, and allowing that ease and flow and tapping more into their soul and who they are as a human gets to translate and support them in their business and all other areas. And it's a passion of mine, a group of people that I really know very well, and one of the ways that I am serving people right now. So I'm super pumped about it.
So you're not really helping with their business side of it, or you are a little bit? Is it more of the personal side?
Yes. More of who they are, what's made them who they are, and rediscovering themselves.
Are you dealing with people that have the trappings of success that are still like, what's the point of life? Or are they having existential crises you're trying to help them navigate through? Or, what's that pain? Why do they say, hey, I'm going to come to you, but really I'm aware that I'm unhappy, or I'm not aware I'm unhappy, right? And maybe you help them get there. What are they trying to solve? What are they trying to do?
So they're in a place where they're making multiple millions a year, and everything in their life. Yes, everything in their life, like they have the more freedom to improve the quality of their life in a lot of areas, though their more intimate relationships are not exactly where they want them to be, because they've, in pursuit of totally killing and smashing their career and their finances, pouring all of their energy into that area of their life, they put themselves and who they are on the back burner. And now they're in this place where they're feeling it, and they're not able to fully enjoy the depth of which they've created in their life, in their career and finances, because there's something internally missing. And it's them, who they are, who they actually want to be. And so sometimes that's it's almost like a quarter life crisis, because the people I'm working with are between 25 and 35. And they're ready to step into, for my men, it's like a king energy. And for my females, it's this queen energy and identity that gets to overflow into all other areas of their life. And they get glimpses of it, of what it feels to be super aligned and joyous and happy naturally. But they're wanting that all the time in what they do.
How are you qualified to help them?
Great question. So over the years, I have gotten to know these people, these archetypes, these identities in very personal relationships. And that has varied from intimate relationships to communities, to places that I have been invited to, and have learned a lot of what it means to know who I am. I continuously attract people that are much farther along in their careers and in their finances than I am, but they're coming to me and they're saying, hey, I really love the way you talk about your life. I really love the way that you know who the fuck you are. Can I cuss on here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
As much as you fucking want.
Awesome. How do you do that? How do you know who you are? Like, how do you exude this energy and this vibrancy in all that you do? I want that. I experience it here and there. So just honestly listening to what people are coming to me for, and realizing that I have fostered an awesome connection to myself, that I'm continuously growing, and supporting people in that way.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's outside of the modalities and the trainings and the certifications of the actual healing work. So
for sure. Yeah. Okay. A lot of places to go from here, because I've been one that has gone through this discovery process myself. Past couple years, exit my company. I'm like, what do I do with my life? And literally being like, I feel like I'm 36 and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, even though from the outside, it looks like I'm doing plenty of shit with my life. Right. So it's a strange thing. And I've thought about this a lot, and maybe you can offer some commentary on this. But generally entrepreneurs, because this is true for all humans, we have a desire to belong. We want to be accepted, loved, belonging, all that shit that Fromm and Freud and all those guys have been talking about for a long time. And we, in our mind, the way to get that love and that acceptance and that community and all these things is go make as much money as possible, right? If I get all that money, people are just going to love me and accept me, right? And what I found is you get so good at and focus on making that money when really all what you need and want is probably already around you, like in your people and relationships and like just spending some time there, right? But what we do is we give that up because like we'll do it later. We'll do it later. It'll come whenever, or I'll buy it. Or even if it's not like a conscious thing where we're like, you're not saying I'm going to buy friends, but in a way, that's kind of what we think we're going to do. We're going to buy love. We're going to buy friends. We're going to buy community, right? But it's this weird, subtle thing. And that's a lot of conditioning from society and whatever, right? So I've seen it though. The answer when you get some of those results, make some of that money, and you're like, oh, well, I'm not fulfilled yet. So I guess the answer is more. And you get so good and addicted to like the game and the pursuit, right? And in some ways it does fulfill you in certain aspects. Like I love the pursuit and the growth and building, but like we need all those other human needs, right? We need that connection. We need those things that we've been giving up for years to chase that path, right?
Yep.
So my thing, I mean, having kids for me was huge. I can't imagine actually if I was still kind of single, like I think my current relationship, like I would be looking to solve this in all the wrong places, basically, is how I would think about that, right? So kids was a big thing for me, but people that don't have kids, I totally get it. So, okay, so why don't you offer where have gaps in what I just said and maybe some commentary or some things you've seen on others going through this?
Totally. So I think it's almost like the faith and belief in understanding that if you do decide to go all in on your relationship with self and who you are and what that looks like, and in more woo terms or spiritual terms, like aligning with your higher self, like who is that on a day-to-day basis? How tuned in and tapped into that are you? It's almost like having faith and believing in experience that you haven't had yet. So for people that have excelled really well in their career and their finances, they've done well. So it's like, okay, I could continue this. There's always more money to make. There's always more things to do and achieve and accomplish. And internally, that validation of, wow, like you're so impressive for XYZ that you've done, because society puts people that have created, exponential, it's very contextual, but financial success for themselves on these pedestals, almost like they're not human. And it's like, well, since I've done really well in this area while ignoring my relationship with self and learning about who I really am, when shit hits the fan, or if I had no money, like who am I behind closed doors when I'm not networking and telling people what I made last year and getting that kind of immediate validation. I was just having a conversation with a client yesterday and in a very similar spot. And it's like, he knows that if he didn't do this work, he would still live a life where he could do a lot, experience a lot, play a lot. And he understands that he wouldn't be able to, he knows and feels that he wouldn't be able to totally feel happy and fulfilled with everything that he does. Even if he said, you know what, I'm not going to hire a mentor, I'm not going to do the work, I'm going to keep it super surface level. But he has this feeling within himself of, I understand that my life can be beyond what I know is possible, and I can experience so much more happiness than I probably even know is possible if I do this work now. So it is something that once you experience or do the work on, I know a lot of people in this space who, work at the firm, do the consulting, have worked at, this place or gone to this Ivy League school and have the plaques and have the things on paper that it's like, wow, you would think this person is really impressive. Yet doing things other than shallow work can sometimes seem so daunting if you haven't really dove in that deep at all. Because you risk shattering everything that you thought was important. And for some people, the fear of that is greater than what's possible on the other side. So there's so many things that I heard that I'm feeling and picking up on from what you said. There's always more money to make. There's always more things to do. But that's kind of what comes up for me in what you shared.
Yeah, and something occurred to me when you were saying that. It's this idea, Aristotle called it the golden mean. Everything in nature finds an average. He called it the golden mean. It's like this perfect amount. It's the Goldilocks zone. You have the far left, the far right, positive and negative. The perfect dose for nature seems to be somewhere in the middle. That's where it establishes equilibrium, figures its shit out. That's where the species that can live there best survive and procreate, etc. Entrepreneurs, for whatever reason, and this is probably true of maybe artists and like everybody that tends to kind of go deep into one specific thing or domain or modality, we tend to do that at the expense of others, right? And then what happens is we get like the money and the fame and all these things that, you know, we were told is what would make us happy. We think we can kind of use those resources to shortchange the hard work that's needed on all the other things. Because, like, I mean, here's the thing. I was thinking about this the other day. I got some young friends that want to find the one, right? And I'm 36, so I'm like, I don't have one-itis. It doesn't even, I can't even think that way anymore. But I went through all those hard experiences, right? Years and years and multiple relationships. And so I think to myself, well, I want to give him advice, but then I know like literally nothing I say to him will matter until he goes through it himself. You know, it's like you can have all the information in the world, but there's nothing that overtakes experience, and usually can't really feel and truly get things until you do experience them. So it seems 100%. Like we're hyper successful here, and we want to take that success and try to just like throw it at other things almost as an afterthought to quickly get those things, right? And that's even if we're aware of that we need to do these other things. A lot of people are just like more, right? Is that something you see a lot in your clients? Is kind of like applying an entrepreneurial, like growth hacking, quick mindset to just like your relationships or your communities? Like, oh, well, right?
Right. So a couple of things are coming to mind. I think it's an awesome thing to be able to have mastered one area of your life, whatever that may be. For somebody that could have been outside of this specific niche that we're talking about, their health, or, you know, their spirituality or relationships is just like rocking and rolling 10 out of 10 for them. I think it actually provides an awesome platform to then channel, like we put the same amount of energy that you've put into mastering this into yourself. You've done it here, you can do it here kind of mentality. And so I think that that's actually really empowering, is holding that mindset versus somebody that's more so starting out in all areas. There's just more work to be done. Second thing that came to mind on one of the last things that you said was, I just slipped my mind, it'll come back.
I forgot the last thing I said already, so I won't blame you if you do.
It'll come back.
Well, something that came up though while you rack your brain on that is, it seems like the people that can go really deep into one thing or one modality or one, you know, they tend to invest more time and energy there, and then other things fall by the wayside. So we've talked about that. But the other thing is I think if you have like a type A entrepreneurial mind and a way, like you want to solve things fast. And so you don't want to listen to people. You want to just like say, this is problem solution. And we know like from a male perspective to a female, like the worst thing you can do is trying to solve their problem. So when we take that entrepreneurial mind, that type A mind, or that kind of like hyper-focused engineer mind, whatever it is, and we try to apply it to modalities to which that's actually not the most effective way to go through the process or to learn or to whatever, I think that's where people get stuck. So in some way, they're trying to kind of take these skill sets that are really good in this area and apply it to like a relationship, when really a relationship is, you should probably be doing the opposite. You should be doing less things. You should be letting like let things happen by not doing anything rather than trying to overbearingly control everything or mitigate everything or whatever.
Right.
And I think that's a huge thing, especially, I mean, again, we're talking about entrepreneurs here, but this is really like anybody that is like good in one area and then they suffer in others, which I think is most of us in some way, right? It just seems like we're just so unable, the human animal is unable, it's almost like nature is unable to kind of do a lot of things well, because nature kind of programs for kind of going deep into one thing and being as good as you can as that to get as much resources and procreation and whatever is possible. And then nature rewards you and then you procreate whatever. So it's like, it seems like from what I've seen, especially being in health for a long time, health and fitness and wellness, it's really, really hard for most humans to do everything like kind of well, right? So we're always like, we do a bunch really good or one thing really good and then everything else suffers, or we can kind of do like a few things really well and then this thing suffer. I think that's a big thing. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or advice, or like, how do you even get somebody started if they're like, all the categories are kind of like just out of whack, like they're completely out of whack.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people get stuck and overwhelmed there because then they think, okay, if I have 10 areas that I need to work on, let me approach 10 different areas at the same time.
Yep.
So I think it gets to be easy. I think life has always been easy, and then we overcomplicate the shit out of things.
Oh.
So I think there's four quadrants: mind, body, soul, and emotion. And each one of those areas, all in total, create a fully optimized human experience or not. And I think all of it comes down to, am I going to focus on my health? Am I going to focus on my emotions? Am I going to focus on my body? Am I going to focus on all these things at once? Or what would be the easiest thing that if you mastered this would make everything else so much easier to learn? Meaning, at the end of the day, it comes down to the discipline of your mind. At the end of the day, it comes down to, are you able to consistently, stubbornly focus on what you want? When things and noise, because there is so much noise out there of limiting beliefs, ways you can and can't do things, ways you should and shouldn't do things in any aspect, but we can keep it in entrepreneurship. I think it starts with the discipline of your mind. So that's why I love what I do, because I feel like what I do is so foundational. And so for people that are just starting out, that maybe haven't mastered their career and their finances, I just hosted a retreat for new budding entrepreneurs. It's learning how to master yourself first, then focus on everything else. If you're not a master of yourself, it's going to be a fucking shit show, and it's going to be so much harder to do everything else consistently. So it's, do you trust yourself? Can you choose confidence in what you set out to do? Do you listen to your intuition enough to know and be guided by that versus needing to get guidance from somebody or something else outside of you? Are you in control of your emotions? Are you in control of your focus? And then from there, awesome. Now that I have this ability to self-regulate, I'm going to go focus on mastering this one area of life that for me, if I were to close my eyes, if you're listening to this right now and you're like, well, I have multiple areas, I want to work on all the things. It's like, make it easy for yourself. Close your eyes and visualize if you're wanting to focus on your finances. If nothing else changed, but your finances accelerated, would it help all the other areas of your life? Feel into that. If you're like, yeah, it'd be good, but my health, if my health totally transformed, that would be whatever that feeling is intuitively, then go all in on that. And then, take it one thing at a time. Things do overflow into other areas. But that's how I like to approach it. It's like a very minimalistic, how can I make this as simple and as easy as possible for myself? And it starts with the mind.
Yeah, a couple things. So I want to unpack the mind part because I have the same philosophy. I believe the mind is the root of everything. And I have some lessons I've done on this. And I put it at the top because your mind is quite literally everything. I mean, everything is heaven or hell on earth, depending on your perspective. Everything is good or bad, depending on your perspective, right? Everything, like one man's riches is another man's trash, or trash is riches. I don't know how the saying goes, but everything is perspective, right? And we see this more in a world where we have unlimited perspective, and we have unlimited perspectives around us trying to convince us that their perspective is right or this or that or holier than thou or whatever. So that's huge. The mind is literally the center of everything. So there's two things here. There's the mind, and I want to ask you, how do you approach that? Because within the mind, and within the category of working on the mind, there's 10,000 freaking things, right? There's a ton of stuff. And we have this question here about actually the personal development kind of industry. And I think that I want to talk about that as well. But the other thing, there's two things here, is health for me. So health is body and mind. And if you don't have proper health, you don't have proper mind. So for me, that's kind of just a given. And I'm to the point where I'm sick of talking about it, because you can only tell somebody they need to cook their meals and get outside and move and exercise and get sunlight and sleep 8 hours a night. You can only tell them so much and often, and people already know they should do that, right? So this is a kind of a tricky way, because the reason your health isn't maybe in check is because maybe your mind isn't. Maybe you don't have the habits and the routines and the awareness or whatever, right? But then if you have the health, that helps your mind operate. So it's which one comes first? And I think everybody's different. But I do think that they go hand in hand. If you get a basic exercise routine and eating routine, your mind works better. Then your mind works better and you make better decisions with your eating. It's a self-reinforcing feedback loop that goes hand in hand, right? So it's all connected. That being said, though, the thing that's at the top is still this. This is still up here at the top of the pyramid for a reason, right? Everything flows under it. if we want to work on our mind, if we want to trust ourselves and some of these other things you've said, how do we do that though? Like specifically, because again, most of this type of stuff people have heard on podcasts or watched videos or they've read books or they've listened to Tony Robbins or whatever. And it's like, then they go back to their life doing the same shit they always did. They regress to their mean, their status quo. I want to know because I struggle with this. This is me trying to figure this out because I feel like I have a grasp on it in some ways for me, but then what about other people? What do we do with the mind? How do we get that thing? Where to start? Like, what's the top thing?
So the first question that I would ask myself is, what is the one thing right now that's getting in my way or that I believe I need to work on or that needs to be transformed? What's the one thing that if I transform that would totally help, if not alleviate everything else that I think is a problem right now? Focusing on that first. Second thing is, intuitively, we always know what we need to do. And this is tying into the personal development industry. The reason it is a billion-dollar industry is because there are so many organizations out there that are designed and supported to continue to have you come back because they are not supportive of you redesigning your day-to-day home life to mirror and match the feeling that you experience in those containers. First thing. Second thing is the myth. One of the biggest myths is you don't need them.
Who's them?
You don't need a guru. You don't need Landmark. You don't need Tony Robbins. You don't need anything. Coming from a place of personal choice, this is what I want to work on. This is what I want to transform. The one thing, making it easy for yourself. Awesome. What is the result I'm after? What's the opposite of that problem? What is that going to do for my life if I create that? Why is that important to me? And then coming from a place of personal choice and power, what is going to support me in getting there? Cool, I'm going to go take this program because it talks about this. I'm going to learn from this mentor because they support people in this. That's the first thing that's coming to mind for me. Second thing is our minds are working for us because they're constantly deleting, distorting, and generalizing whatever it is that we're focused on to therefore solidify whatever we're thinking and focused on in our external reality. And that is essentially what truth becomes. So something that I really love.
You say the mind is working for us. Is that what you said?
Yes.
What if you don't have control of your mind? Would it not then be working against you?
It would simply just be a lack of being able to discipline your mind, but the problem isn't your mind.
So then what would the problem be?
Very contextual depending on the person. Is the problem really that they can't focus on what they want? Is it negative thinking? Or the presenting problem is never the real problem? Our mind is a tool that is designed for us, I believe. But what goes on in it and how we think and how we process and how we project or how we live unconsciously or all those other things are determined by us. So we are our own gurus, right? But so many people don't want to do the work. So many people say, oh yeah, I just listened to this podcast. I just went to this seminar and it feels so great. And then their lives don't change because it's more work to discipline your mind than it is to go to somebody and ask for answers. So to answer your question, it's very much dependent on the person and what the problem actually is. Is it that they can't focus on what they want? Is it something else? Did something happen when they were a child that therefore created this experience where they thought they couldn't trust themselves? So everything that goes on up in here seems out of control. Like there's so many layers, so many beautiful layers to us as humans and why we do what we do.
So you said the mind works for us. Now that sounds a little bit like Joe Dispenza type of work, or
love him.
Yeah. So I guess playing the devil's advocate here, I would say that if the mind for most people actually works against them, I believe.
For sure.
Because of it's a combination of what they let in, right? It's a combination of blind spots and they don't maybe realize certain things. And then they have a head filled with propaganda and bullshit, right? And then the mind works to like fulfill that end, but that end ends up being a net negative for them and what they're trying to accomplish, right? So
Yep.
But to also reinforce what you're saying, when you remove that, when you completely remove shame, guilt, propaganda, everything you think you know, like, and you really return to the, Zen mind, beginner's mind, right? Socrates, I know that I know nothing. Nietzsche said, you got to literally leave everything, be the lion, roar, it all goes, and then be born again as a child. Then I feel like with pure openness, no preconceived notions or bias or crony beliefs you want to believe because somebody this, that, whatever, then I think the mind is the most powerful force, especially the subconscious mind, that you and I, we can't even control. We just got to let it do its thing, and it's gonna smoke us in any efforts we try to consciously do. But I think on the flip side, if you don't have intention for it, if you don't have awareness around it, and you just let, your environment mold you into something, basically somebody else's goal, then I think the mind is the most dangerous thing in your life. And that's why you said, like, relationship with yourself. I keep hearing that as a theme, and it's something that I think most of us don't have a very good relationship with ourselves. And I think that's connected to lack of awareness and lack of control and shame and guilt and all this stuff. What would you say to that?
So two things, and I'm going to say the points out loud so that I can remember both. Is inner child. First thing
yes.
is, like you mentioned briefly, and tying off of that is, I think if you're willing to do the work, the 2 points are inner child and radical responsibility. So if you're willing to do the work, to change your circumstances, if you're listening to this right now and you're feeling like things are out of your control, you're living in a victim mentality, maybe in one area of your life, maybe in all areas of life, you think life is happening to you and all the things in between. Are you willing to take radical responsibility for the creation of everything outside of you and what you're experiencing? Because if you can create anything that you want. Mm-hmm. Most people don't want to go there. Or, I'll take responsibility for the awesome things I've created in my life, but that thing over there, that wasn't me.
Yeah, they don't know what that actually means. They don't know what extreme ownership or radical responsibility actually is. So actually, that's curious. Maybe we can have this as a sidebar question. I want to hear what you, like, how would you approach that? When someone's like, I don't want to do it. And that's fine. You're my coach. You got to help me. So I'm curious what you would do with that. But also, you're still on that first question.
Yes. So putting a pin in that one and then just bringing it back with the inner child work is, if you decide to take radical responsibility and you decide to embark on the beautiful journey of what that means for your life and what is possible for you if you go that route, becoming a master of yourself, owning who you are, creating really truly what you want at your core. It's a process of unlearning and deprogramming everything that no longer serves you from when you were a child, and we've heard it so many times, all the way up until you decide to do the work and look within. And a really awesome and fun practice is getting a picture of you between the ages of 0 and 7 and leaving it out where you can see it every day. So when you're being hard on yourself, when you're experiencing something you don't want, when you're beating yourself up, because sometimes we are the meanest to ourselves and no one else, is what would you say to the 7-year-old you right now? Everything is fine. I'm going to figure it out. Maybe I need a hug right now. It's always super basic. And the process of all the unlearning and deprogramming is you're coming back home to you. We were born limitless beings. And then whatever else came in the way after that told us we weren't, or how we could be, or what we could or couldn't do in this amount of time at this age, and yada, yada, yada. It's a process. And I also know, because I work with like 25, 35-year-olds who sometimes have never dove in deep ever, and they're embarking on it now, is the process can seem like, is this going to be like sitting in a therapist's office? Is this going to be super unsexy and not fun? And it gets to be fun. It gets to be exciting. It gets to be empowering and fun and playful if you choose. So those are the two things that I wanted to touch on, and then we can go.
How is it fun? How does it get to be fun? What, like, tangibly, what do people get to do?
You get
even
to
if it's just an example, because everybody's different. Everyone's different, but any examples?
You get to experience what it really means to live an unlocked life. And then you get to attract more and more of that in the form of relationships and money and friendships and how you feel and how you show up and how you express yourself. You become a magnet for epic shit all the time.
Right. So that's the goal. We all want that, right?
Yeah.
But that being reborn again,
like
channeling the inner child, doing that work. How is that part fun? Because that's the part nobody wants to do. That's the part that's hard. And I will say on your point about the self relationship and the child picture thing is great. And again, why I think everybody needs to have kids, because like it makes you be patient and be understanding. It's just like it forces you to be. But
yeah,
we really are the most toxic to ourselves than almost anything in our lives from the people I've seen. I've seen more people treat themselves like shit than they would even ever consider treating another human being. What the fuck is 100%. Up with that? Is it because we got to be a narcissist because we like love ourselves too much? I don't know. I've gotten better at that, and like Naval's helped me a lot. He's got a lot of quotes on self-conflict, how he just gave it up, and having kids has helped me just not being so like, oh, I should work, oh, I should do this, whatever, right? But I mean, I'm telling you, it's still a hard demon to slay.
So, addiction to pain.
Oh yeah.
Period.
And that victim mentality is addictive too. Victim mentality and blame, right? You give up your agency, it's somebody else's fault.
Yep. Even when you're living out of a victim mentality, you are still getting something out of it.
Oh, hell yes, you are.
Attention,
yep.
Even if it's in the form of in a negative way or a toxic way. There's anything we hold on to longer than we need to. There's some kind of secondary gain. And it's just like, it's human, right? And it's like to let go of the judgment if you realize that's where you're at. Like, we're human. Coaches have coaches. I have blind spots at every season. Nobody's perfect. This is the beauty of the experience, but for so many people it can seem overwhelming. I definitely have moments where I get overwhelmed. I'm like, I'm learning so much and so much is breaking apart and transforming, and I feel like I'm being cracked open, and I'm like, okay, let's hold on to the seat. It's a ride. Addiction to pain. That is something that I have unraveled and continue to unravel for myself, for the need of things needing to be hard before you get what you want. It has to be difficult in order for you to let go of that thing. Or like, oh, I've struggled with this for my whole life, so therefore it has to take a shit ton of time and work and hair pulling in order to transform it.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
All that is a very commonly believed, like, collective belief of
story. Yep.
It has to take long to change. It has to take a long time to heal. And it has to take a long time to become the person that I've always wanted to be. And that is total fucking bullshit. But so many people believe it. And you have to be willing, even if it's like 1% of you, to be open to that belief being totally fucking blown out the roof. And if you're not, and you're like, this is my problem, and I'm fighting for my problem, and you don't know my problem like I do, then it's like, you're going to be ready when you're ready. You know, you're going to be ready when you're ready. And I know somebody close to me in my family who, she's like, I'd prefer to be, I like to use the terms, being at cause for your life, meaning radical responsibility in everything you create, versus being at the effect. Like, I don't have responsibility in this, so you're kind of floating through life.
Yep.
And I've had a conversation with her, and she's like, I prefer to live at the effect. I prefer to, the work overwhelms me. I don't want to go there. And like, that was the hardest thing for me to swallow. And then I just had to accept that, like, yeah, that's a pretty common experience for a lot of people. But they're just like, I don't want to know what's underneath there. I don't want to look at my demons. I feel like they think that the pain of not looking is better than the potential reality of breaking through it and getting to the other side, because they don't know what it looks like. But they know their pain, they know their problems, and it's comfortable. Even if it's uncomfortable, it's comfortable.
Yeah. So okay, there's quite a few things. The duality of life is so fascinates me. especially I've been telling people lately a lot because it's become more of a pet peeve of mine. Every time I hear somebody say, well, that's hard. It's too hard. Like, it's hard. I got to do my podcast. And I got to do thumbnails and I got to write the show notes and I got to work my 9 to 5. And I'm like, okay, it's hard. And then I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the best way to communicate with this person to explain my perspective? Because my perspective is that the thing that's hard, that's in front of you, that's in front of the thing you want, is the door you take to get the thing you want. And if you go around that door, you're not going towards the thing you want. Hardness is the thing that defines results and things you want and that are desirable. It's called proof of work in the Bitcoin community is what we call it. Anything that is valuable required effort. When we are attracted to a sexy specimen, it's because those genes, hundreds of thousands of years went into making that sexy specimen, right? And then that fake designer bag or that fake ass that we're like, that is so obviously fake, repels us because we're like, that's cheating. It's not proof of work, right? So it's really, really hard for people to reconcile this because we live in a world where everything's on demand, dopamine's constantly available, right? But it's all that fake counterfeit kind of circumventing proof of work. And then we do it more and more and more and more. We become more addictive, less dose, just like the cocaine addict or heroin addict needs to do more and more and more for less of an effect. And then eventually it implodes because it doesn't work anymore. And we're like, okay, now what? If more is not the answer, then, et cetera. So I know I'm going a little bit off tangent here, but hardness is the thing, right? And you kind of learn that the hard way. You kind of learn that the hard way through life. Generally, entrepreneurs learn that the hard way because every time they try to go around hard, it just smacks it back in the face because the market doesn't give a shit about you or what you want. But there was a question I wanted to ask you in there. There was a question would you say that there are people that come and they live a human life and then it's over? And would you think that some people lived harder, more unhappy, more suffering in that life than others? Would you, like, if you had to just obviously consider that, what would you say? Would you say that's the case? Some people have it happier and some suffer more, some have it better, some don't. I mean, some people, their life ends when they're 16, etc.
Yeah. I think it's a great question. I used to think that people that were silver spoon fed, raised as a child, had less problems. I used to think that, people that maybe weren't silver spoon fed growing up, but then created whatever, financial empire that is epic and awesome, that they didn't really struggle anymore. But I realized that we all, in our own individual ways, as these souls living in the human experience, will go through our own unique journey of pain and struggle and scrapes and getting our ass handed to us in a million different ways. And the forms may look different for everyone, but when you chunk up high enough, it all comes down to, needing more love or not feeling empowered, or I didn't take responsibility there, or no matter the form at which it came through, right? Like, we're all connected. So it's like this universal lessons that we learn, however we learn it. And the people that we mentioned earlier, like, just because somebody was raised a different way that you think is better off, it doesn't mean shit about, like, do they know who they are? Are they happy? Like, do they think that they're deserving? Like, there's so many things. And I think
it's to each his own.
Certain people,
it's to each her own.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'll use an example real quick because I think I know what you're trying to say. So I lost my father when I was young, but there's people that lost their mother and father maybe when they were younger. Do they win the victim award? Right? Does their worse off by math experience somehow downplay the hard shit I had to go through? Right? Like, that, and that's one of those insidious, like, victim games where you, like, who's the bigger victim? We see it in identity politics bullshit all day long, and it's a complete joke, right? Because every human has a relative life experience. And my question earlier, the point was that some people objectively, if you had to mathematically track it on a scale, are going to live harder lives. And maybe they don't ever get a chance to kind of learn and adapt and grow, because I believe that hardness on the other side is gratitude and success. So I think they're all connected, right? And I actually empathize for the child with a silver spoon that have never had to really struggle maybe early on in their life. And then they're smack dab 30 years old and they're like, I don't know who I am. I'm miserable. And then like they might have a harder thing to go through later on because they didn't get that learning that life usually throws at most of us younger. So I don't actually envy those people at all, right? Like just our society's like, oh, if you have money, it's all good. No. Like how many people with money and fame and whatever commit suicide or are miserable or whatever, right? Like, so anyways, my point was that the human life, right, is objectively, because I'm thinking back to your sister or your friend, whoever you said that you were talking to. Was it your sister that you were talking to that having that conversation?
Oh, God, we'll just keep it a family member.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Person.
Yeah.
Person you talked to.
Yeah.
It sounds like she wants to butt up to comfort and like be okay right there. And, you know, like, I mean, personally, I think that she's going to be giving up so much potential for her life. And like, for me, that feels like a complete waste of life and time, but that's my perspective. Maybe for her, that's okay. But one thing I do know for sure is that if she were to break through that barrier, whatever she's at, she would unlock probably worlds she can't even fathom. Right. And then that growth 100%. Mindset, just growth, right? And but the flip side is I also think that she's going to suffer more than she's really understanding later on when she looks back and she's like, why did I care so much? And now I'm 80 or 70 or whatever, if I'm lucky to get there. And I should have just done that thing, or I should have just like suffered for a week and gotten through it or whatever it is. Right. So like, it's very dangerous, I think, sometimes. And I think generally as a first principle, that's why comfort is killer, because comfort just keeps you in a place that will manifest usually later on in like a dose by dose, like a small poison a day. Like that's just not for me. I'd rather go big and go home rather than like slowly die, you know, painful death and a painful death of mediocrity. Right. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So a couple things. I think at the end of the day, there's no right or wrong or good or bad. And I think that somebody that is meant to continuously unlock new levels for themselves for their whole life, there's so many people that if I were to draw, I call it the leaf of evolution. If I were to draw like a circle and then draw a line outside that circle, and then I would create a new circle around it, and I would just keep going. This is like, that would be an example in a diagram of comfort zones and leaving this, and now you're here. Some people make it to their second comfort zone, and that's their whole life. Mm-hmm. And then people like you and I, the people that I work with, people that we're, you know, connected with in our community, are so purpose-driven and have these big missions and goals, and know that in order to get there, in order to serve people in the way they want to, they have to continuously break outside their comfort zone. So then they'll end up, you know, much farther along. But I know just because of this isn't coming from a place of giving up, but I just know that if a person is ready to change or wants to change, then they will pursue it. And I also believe that everybody is doing the best they can with what they have. So for sure, I can see a family member and know, hey, if you ditched alcohol once and for all, like your life would be so different. And so many relationships would have been repaired had you not been addicted to drinking. And even though I can see this family member and who they could become, like if he's not going to make the decision, am I going to choose to hate him? Or am I going to choose to put pressure on him or want him to be somebody he's not? Or can I forgive myself for holding judgment against this person for not wanting to change and do the work? And accept that is sometimes where people are at, and accept the sadness around, and to let it go, for it to just become this neutral experience of, you can see somebody and know, damn, you could be doing X, Y, and Z and experiencing all these things if you just, but if people are doing the best they can with what they have, and that's their reality, is doing the best they can, sometimes like there's that, like, that's it. They're going to have their awakening if they have it. And I stopped trying to change or wanting other people that were close to me in getting into this work, I stopped trying to want them to change or be somebody that they weren't if it wasn't a natural path that they were going to go on, or ask me, hey, how did you do this thing? And that's a whole other thing, you know, and there can be a bit of heaviness in that, but it's also reality. And I think shaming people for not going all the way also doesn't help the collective and how we're growing as humans. But to be the metaphor yourself, so that way it unconsciously inspires them. Maybe they change a habit. Maybe they think about this thing differently. So there's so many things there. But something else that I wanted to say was, when you were talking about things being hard and it being necessary to go through those things, I think the work is the work. But if your why is incredibly strong and deep, then when shit hits the fan and you're questioning, should I quit? Should I go work for somebody else? Should I change everything and give up? If you have a really strong why, then the work isn't hard. It's just the work, if that makes sense. And I just thought of that and I wrote that down, and I wanted to share that.
Yeah. So the Stoics were very influential to me, Stoicism. And when it comes to friends and family and people you want to help, the only way to actually help them is to truly accept them and then just do your thing. Like, that's it. And they'll come to you every so often. They'll ask questions. They'll ask for advice. You'll give them the advice. Maybe you'll give them the same advice 10 times in a row. And then maybe that 11th time they'll change something, or they'll just keep dating the same people or doing the same things that you think they shouldn't do. But the worst thing you can do, and the most inhumane thing, and the most just you're an asshole thing you can do, is to judge and to say, well, if you're not going to change, I'm not your family member anymore. Like, those people, I want to slap in the fucking face. I'm sorry. I can't stand that shit, right? It's such a narcissistic, selfish, fucking self-centered thing. It drives me nuts. So that's obviously a peeve of mine. That being said, you also made me think of something, because I do fall into this trap. Like, not everybody's meant to build big things, to do these things. Like, and that's fine. Like, we don't need to judge them, and, you know, we can offer like our perspective and maybe people can learn from that. But I always struggle with that kind of like wanting to help people, and like, I want them to be their best. Like, I want them to be better than they probably want themselves to be better. It's this weird thing, right? And so I always like struggle with that. I'm sure you do as well, when you see the potential in people, right? But then you realize over time, you got to accept what you can control, and that is yourself, and that's it. And you can't accept anything else, blah, blah, blah. But the thing that reconciles that, I think, is as long as people know what they want and they're okay with it and they're content. The thing that drives me crazy the most is when people truly want something different and they're truly suffering and whatever. And then they complain about it and they do all these things. And then they just repeat the same mistakes. They don't want to like do the thing or whatever. And they say, well, I don't want to do that, but I want this at the same time. And it's like, at least accept it. Live how you're going to live based on your decisions, right? Take ownership of this life. And then ironically, you're probably like, oh, most of the things you think you want, right? But when people won't do that, that's what really irks me the most. And I think that everybody should be able to find peace and contentment, and through that happiness, if they just took responsibility and got rid of all the bullshit outside of themselves, and just like that's really all I want for people. Live the life you want on purpose for yourself. And if you do that, that's winning. That's winning at life to me.
Well, common sense is not that common. And we all have it within us. We all have it within us. But I think the hardest thing, two things, actually three things. The hardest thing is, you know, why, if it is that simple, why doesn't everybody do it?
Well, which part?
And it's
just the choice, well, like choosing? Because I don't think it's that simple.
Right,
it's simple, but it's hard. It's simple, but it's hard.
I think it gets easier and easier. And the truth is always consistent and the same. Can you take radical responsibility? Are you going to focus on what you want? Like, can you do the work? Like, it's all here. It's belief in what is possible for yourself before it's happened, and knowing that you're deserving and worthy of that thing that you want to create, or the life that you want to have, but you don't have it. Well, can you believe that it's true before it happens? Second thing is, the pattern of creating anything you want, I think, is focusing on what you want, taking inspired action based on that, getting the feedback from that inspired action. You can't fuck it up. You can't fail. There are no mistakes. It's just feedback. And then can you readjust your sails, readjust what you need to readjust, and continue and repeat it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Because eventually you will get to where you want to be. Eventually you will create the thing that you want. Like, it is inevitable. But so many people get stuck in the feedback part of like, oh, I just took this personally, or this person said no, or they closed the door in my face, or like this didn't work out, or whatever it is. And it's this like identified thing of like, well, then I'm a failure and I can't do this and I'm not meant to live this life, and all the narratives. Or they get stuck in the inspired action piece. We always know what we need to do. We don't need a plan. There is no plan. If you have a plan, the plan always changes, right? So it's like, can you get out of your own way of thinking like, I'm a little puppy dog and I need to go hire a coach because I need somebody to tell me what to do, because I don't want to trust my intuition and live in this place of like, I actually have all the answers that I need. And no, I'm going to go to a personal development training and I'm going to learn the like 10 ways to live an optimized life. And then I'm going to come back and then I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to keep going back and spend thousands of dollars in these places, because at the end of the day, it's like, you don't need any of that. The inspired action comes from within. All you need to know is the next thing you're going to do to create what you want. What's the one thing you can do right now? And then the next step will come. Go do the thing. Repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. And an amazing mentor of mine taught me in getting out of the feedback loop of thinking that when feedback happens that you wouldn't prefer, oftentimes the human automatic response is, shit, I messed up. I'm going to judge myself. I'm going to be hard on myself.
Closed mindset. Yep.
If you can break the pattern, and an old mentor of mine used to say, hey, how'd those calls go? When I used to like cold call and get used to getting on the phone, breaking through my fear of all of that. And I'd say, oh, this person hung up on me. This person told me, how dare you call me a da-da-da-da-da.
Yep.
And in the middle of saying all of that, he would at the top of his lungs, clap his hands together and be like, yes. And I look at him and I'm like, are you insane? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. And he's like, congrats. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, every no is one step closer to a yes. This is the feedback. This is the process. And over and over getting used to that. Now it's like, dude, feedback is feedback. Like, stop taking shit so personal. But people get stuck there. So for sure, it's just, it's basic. But that is something that I definitely get in my feels about the way that you have on certain topics. And at the end of the day, that's like one of the hardest things is people know what they need to do. They just don't do it. The hardest thing is doing the thing. And then it's not even hard. You just got to get used to it, like practicing a muscle. And then your intuition's always there. And you're like, aha, I need to do this. I need to go talk to this person I'm feeling called to. So yeah, I could go on.
Yeah, we both can. But we'll try to wrap this up soon because we got a couple right now. But there's two things you just said. One is, I want to ask you a question. Do you know how to ride a bike?
Mm-hmm.
Did you?
Yes, I do.
Did you know how to ride that bike the first time you got on that bike?
Nope.
Let's say, I don't know. I've skinned my knees on bikes. I remember vividly. There were some of my early traumatic childhood experiences skidding on a bike. Do you remember anytime you might have fallen off a bike or you were riding it and you kind of tipped over or whatever? Do you remember anything like that?
Oh, for sure.
What did you do after that?
Cried.
And then what?
And then got back on the bike.
Exactly. Exactly. The idea that life or entrepreneurship or business or writing a play or a movie or just anything that we try to do as adults in the adult world, right? The idea that you go at it and you're successful the first time, like, I don't think anybody consciously believes this, but they unconsciously believe it because they do what you said. They get negative feedback and like, oh, I must not be cut out for this because like one person had a fucking opinion about it. It's unbelievable. And this is why, for me, life of first principles is all that matters, right? And this is how you solve that kind of action, because action, I don't think is the hardest thing. I think it's the second hardest thing. The first hardest thing is getting a mind that will consistently take action regardless of the feedback loops. The only feedback that matters, actually it all matters, but the only feedback the feedback matters, but the only thing you're going to use it for is to learn. Just like you get on a bike a second time, a third time, you learn, you go, you learn, you go. That's all life is, right? So one, think about riding the bike anytime you're feeling imposter syndrome or you're not cut out for it or you didn't get the feedback you wanted. It's so absurd, right? But a lot of people that have never done these things because they've lived in the safety of college and teachers and a job and a boss, they've never had to do these things. They never put themselves out there and they do it And yeah, it's fucking painful. It's like when you scrape your damn knee and you're fucking 5, it hurts. But like, you're not going to not ride a bike again, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is that coincides with that, the mindset part. You said deserving and worthy. I think that's actually the foundation of everything. I think nothing anybody does matters if they are going to sabotage themselves because they don't believe they deserve it or they're worthy or whatever. And I want to actually ask you, how does somebody become deserving and worthy of anything? How would you answer that? If you were trying to justify it, how, because I don't know what that answer would be. I'm curious how people would justify it or think about it.
Through however we were raised, at some point, for whatever reason, and this is no offense to parents, it is not a perfect A to Z, point A to point B game. And if you as a child received more attention and love from achieving or being clean or doing this for mommy or not talking back or obeying or whatever the case may be, getting good grades, right? Whatever form that came in for you, at some point unconsciously, if you are listening to this right now and you have not yet fully unlocked the fact that you are deserving and worthy of everything you fucking desire, period. If there's any part of you, or just at any season, sometimes it may come up again, oh my God, am I worthy of this? Like a new level. At some point we decided that there was something else that needed to happen in order for us to feel that. But we are deserving and worthy, period, and we are enough now. That's it. If you don't make any more money tomorrow, if you don't talk to anybody else, if you don't post the next podcast, if you don't do or be anything other than who you are now and you never change, you are enough. You are worthy. And you are always deserving. That's it. And whatever energetically may be getting in the way of that is simply something to be curious about and to begin to unpack. When did you decide that you weren't deserving or worthy?
Yeah. So deserving and worthy. Yeah. We could unpack that for quite a bit.
I did remember the thing that I wanted to talk about at the beginning.
Okay, go.
Oh, you
go for it.
So when we talked about sometimes people think that if they've succeeded in one area that they can apply the same strategies to another area of life and trying to bypass growth or the hard work. So I was having an awesome conversation with an amazing thought leader and friend of mine. And, I was asking him, does the growth ever, I love asking just different kinds of questions to people. And I was like, do you think that the growth ever ends? Or do you think we ever get to a place where we're fully healed in this lifetime? And he said, I don't think that it's possible to measure it like I'm 80% there. I'm 90%, fully self-actualized. And I believe that we get to a point where first you have to be selfish. There's no bypassing. And so many people get stuck here in the martyr identity of, I'm making $2,000 a month. I live at my mom's place, yet I want to save the world. And I want to solve world hunger. And it's like, dude, you are not going to fucking do anybody any good if you don't get your shit together and move out of your mom's house. No offense to mom. Thankful for the moms that allow us to stay in their homes. But like, you have to fill your cup in order to fill other people's. And if you are pouring out of an empty cup, you are doing everybody a disservice. So you have to be open to being selfish in the beginning. And then I believe that you get to a place where your capacity expands and you no longer are this like constantly getting triggered. Am I projecting? Is this my thing? Yada, yada, yada. And then you can hold space for other people. And then you can hold space for how am I serving and impacting the world? But it's just kind of like this evolution and you can't bypass or skip any parts of it. And I think that that's a beautiful thing, but I just loved the way that my friend had worded that. And that was what I wanted to share at the beginning.
Yeah. I am unapologetically selfish as possible because I've been doing this a long time. I figured it out. But even with kids, like for example, if I don't get sleep, I'm not pleasant to be around. I'm not productive. Yep. I can't do the best work. I berate my employees. Like I'm short tempered with my partner. Like I have to be as selfish as possible to be as selfless as I can. Because like, unless you're literally Hitler, Like maybe Hitler shouldn't have gotten a lot of sleep because maybe he would have done less evil, right? But like if you're doing good in the world, you have to be as selfish as possible because that's the only way to give your gifts and make your impact and do your shit, right? And I think that is, again, connected to that idea of that worthiness and this idea of shame and guilt. And these are all, I mean, I get these. I've studied evolutionary biology and psychology for years. I understand why Mother Nature programmed humans to be this way. But what we're seeing in a modern environment with 8 billion humans and social media and all this craziness, the people that are thriving today can observe their primal behaviors and then they consciously choose to not just give in to them at every whim, right? Low time preference, think long term, invest in your health, do all these things. These are all things that aren't actually natural to Homo sapiens sapiens, right? Mm-hmm. But the big thing that gets me the most, that I think is really the bane of all humans, is the social aspect and the things around shame and guilt and fear. I mean, almost everything we do is fear of other people. Like public speaking, they say, is more fearful for people than death, right? Yep. It's like, that's pretty crazy, you know? Like some people would rather die looking good to others than like die, you know, like they'd be more worried about whether they look good to others when they died than just dying itself. It's bizarre. But that's the thing that gets us tied up into these bullshit stories about us not being worthy or good or whatever. And it's kind of crazy. I mean, I don't know the answer. Like this shit has taken me years to grapple with and become aware of. And I'm pretty hyper self-aware, but I think self-awareness and in some way figuring out your inner child, like doing whatever you can do to get closer to that place where you're born again, like Nietzsche said, as a child, where you've shed all of the dogma and the belief systems and the social pressures and the guilt and the shame because this, because that person, like when you let go of all that, to me, that's peace, but it's also like the basis for a very highly self-actualized, impactful, meaningful life that you can do great things, but also be grateful. And to answer my perspective on like the number, like, can the growth ever stop? The growth doesn't stop, but you can have a healthy relationship to it. And you can observe yourself when you slip into your bad habits. And then what I've learned is you can quickly get out of it and just kind of control it better, right? You're not going to like ever absent it. You're not going to be perfect and unemotional, but you can absolutely be in control of your shit. So that's how I would answer that. Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts on any of that? And also tell us how you're helping people and plug yourself, shamelessly plug your business and everything, anything you want.
Beautiful. Last thing I'll say, I guess, is it gets to be easy. It gets easier and easier. It is like working out or getting better at anything. The process of self-regulating and creating what you want gets easier and easier. And I don't think that the goal of us being here on this planet is to figure out everything that there is to the meaning of life. It is whatever you want it to be and whatever you want your journey to be. And then surrounding yourself with like-minded people, 100%. So this was so fun. I love diving deep. I love all the places that we went and went through and dove deep into and came back up from. And very grateful for this conversation and just grateful for being able to talk about these things, share them with others in the middle of the afternoon on a Thursday. Like, what a badass way to spend an hour.
Yes, we are very lucky. Very grateful.
Very grateful. So yeah, I as I mentioned at the beginning, how I'm serving people, I work with people one-on-one. In that capacity, if you have created or mastered an area of your life that you have just absolutely enjoyed the shit out of, and you are on this path of really being excited and wanting to commit to learning about more of who you are and how you want to be in this next chapter of your life, I am your gal. I make learning, self-mastery, and understanding it at a molecular level fun, sexy, amazing, gritty, brutal, direct. Like, it gets to be all the things. And yeah, it gets to be fun. And beginning of 2021, I'm going to be releasing a mini course, and it is going to be the foundation of all there is to self-mastery that I have taught in retreats and seminars and just what I've learned through a lot of training. And I'm just simplifying it all and making it really easy to digest, process, and I'm super excited about it. So that'll be coming out in the new year. Did I say January 2021? I meant 2022.
2022, yes. We skipped a year, yes. So I'm like a year behind. But where can they find you on the socials and the website and everything?
Yes. So I am the most present and active on the gram. So I am Margaux, Margaux, and then mentoring on Instagram. Happy to connect with you there. And that is everything. Again, thank you. Thank you for this awesome conversation.
We'll do a round two. I mean, we'll like try to pick we'll just pick one topic next time and just talk about one topic because I'm sure we can go into that single topic for a good hour. So the links will be in the show notes. Margaux, Margaux. Mm-hmm. It threw me off. Every time I look at it, it's throwing me off. Mentoring at Instagram. Thanks for being here. This was a blast.
Thank you. Thank you.